Sairam, thank you, Brother Billy. By the infinite grace, love, and compassion of Bhagavan Baba, we are here in this nurturing spiritual growth satsang. So without much ado, let us invite Brother William to conduct the session. William.
Thank you very much, Suresh. Sairam, everyone. It's really a pleasure to be with you again this way. And really for the fourth session now of the Nurturing Spiritual Growth program. And today we have an interesting, really intriguing topic, which I'll put up right now. Let's see. And it's around unconditional selfless love and the spiritual journey as a whole. So to recap, Suresh has taken us on to what is the nature of spirituality itself and the path of progress that we can make. I spoke a bit about what is the true nature of divinity and our true selves as love. Niranjan talked about the three paths and presented us with the sense of how those paths are grounded in love. And it's where we can grow very specifically in different ways that we prefer in our growth. And this was around, therefore, what is the journey that we're really all on? And so here we are. This is the fourth edition. And we'd like to start with Niranjan just debriefing with you how you've done in the last 2 weeks after his last session. Niranjan?
Oh, Sairam, everyone. Sairam, thank you, Brother William, for the session today. And so we'll just spend a few minutes. Maybe we all can share how we understood the three paths, how they're nurturing us in our spiritual growth, and how have we put our insights from the last session into practice. Anyone would like to share your thoughts? We go with Sister Rajeshwari.
Sairam. It is spirituality that is very important in our life, because Guru is actually our GPS who will take us to the goal. So we have to follow and practice his teachings. That can be only done by unconditional love and selfless service. That's what we were discussing last time, about the love. Without love, nothing can be achieved in spirituality. That is the basic. Sairam.
Sairam. So unconditional love is expressed in action as selfless service. Thank you, sister. Any thoughts about the clock analogy we discussed? How the three paths are important and how they are interconnected? Have you, maybe in the last 2 weeks, when you went to the center or when you were at work, any thoughts as to how you at least be aware, thought about it and try to practice these three paths into your daily living?
Sairam, brother.
Sairam.
I just want to share something about putting love into action. So in this past week, there was one person who was troubled, and he shared that there's somebody who is always there giving him a lot of trouble, and he's losing his patience and retaliating. So therefore, the end of our discussion was, if that person is actually, if we talk about oneness, then that person is also one of us. And the only way we can help somebody who's troubling us is to continuously shower love. No matter what, shower love. And by showering love, we are giving that person an opportunity to go to his own corner and have a thought. How come I'm troubling him so much and yet he's showering love? This is one way to change that person, just by sharing love. If we were to retaliate and give him trouble, he will never get the opportunity to go to his corner and think about that unconditional love. So I think this is one very good practical way of putting one of the paths into action. Thank you, Sairam.
Thank you, brother. That was so beautiful. This is a very practical, a very challenge that most of us face in our daily life, that some of the things maybe a person does or did that we may not like, and maybe some of the things they express or the way they conduct themselves, we are not in alignment. So we tend to have these barriers. So thank you for sharing, and how we can maybe break the barrier, and how we can, first of all, be that good person, and how that love is expressed. So thank you for sharing. We'll take maybe one more person, and then we'll go into session. Anyone else? Anyone would like to share? Okay, maybe that I'll return the control back to Brother William. Thank you for sharing.
Thank you, Niranjan, very much. And so to really move into today's session and content, let's begin with a little bit of a silent period in which we'll share various multi-faith quotes about the theme for today. And Hema, could you play that for us now?
Sit comfortably and relax, or close your eyes and move into a peaceful state of inner reflection. Focus on your breath. Just notice it without trying to change it. Allow your breath to become deeper naturally without force. With each breath, exhale any tension or busy thoughts. Feel yourself relaxing more and more, your mind becoming more still. Continue breathing like this as the inspirational readings are read out. And allow any memories, insights, or images to naturally come into your awareness. Buddha declared, just as one feels loving kindness when seeing a dearly beloved being, so one should extend one's love to all creatures. Jesus said, just as I have loved you, so you too should love one another. Love your enemies. Lao Tzu advised, love the world as yourself, then you can care for all things. Muhammad asked, do you love your Creator? Love your fellow beings first. The Hindu Upanishad tells us, as your desire is, so is your will. As your will is, so is your deed. As your deed is, so is your destiny. A Hebrew proverb states, only love gives us the taste of eternity. Sathya Sai Baba sums this up by saying, love towards God must be witnessed by love towards men, for men is the visible manifestation of God. Love is in all. Love is of all. Love is all. What theme or message from these quotes most resonate within you? How does that theme relate to how you can nurture your spiritual growth?
Wow, that helps me, to get centered. I hope it does for you as well. The session that I'll be leading today will really focus on providing some material for you to be able to answer 3 questions as we get to each point in the presentation. We'll be talking at different states of spiritual consciousness. Really, the first question is, when have you experienced each state that we'll be talking about? And then how could you shift and dance from one state into another, like in your relationships and your work and your psi activities? We've talked about that a little bit already, just from the reviews that people shared, about how to share love versus retaliate, for example. That's the kind of shifting of energy that we might be talking about. And then how could this unconditional love really help you evolve towards more of non-duality? We'll be talking about those different states in that way as well. So again, we'll get to the point where each of these questions become more clear. And I want to start by actually going back to a couple of things from the last session I did a month ago, where we talked about how Swami said that spiritual knowledge has to be based on experience, not just on what we read. For example, if you look at the signs to different cities, Tokyo, suppose you wanted to go to Tokyo. Well, you could read lots of books about Tokyo. You could actually get to the point where you could say, well, gee, I know exactly where to walk if I was in Tokyo to such and such. But you haven't really experienced Tokyo until you've gotten there, or until someone has painted a story in which you vividly feel that experience of actually being there. And in the same way, the words that we talk about even today are more like these kinds of signs, but we need to look more deeply into what's the actual experience that they're pointing to. And another example, you could become an expert in skydiving by reading all these different books. And you know everything about how to pack a chute, how to jump out of the airplane, what are the wind dynamics you have to pay attention to, what are the safety features you have to have, why do people love skydiving, lots of things like that. But until you actually jump out of the airplane, you haven't really known skydiving, until you actually had that experience in some way. So really everything, even the words we use here, are more going to be talking about something. But really your quest is to what's the experience that they're all pointing to. And so we have a couple of clues about how to do that. One is from the Christian mystical classic called The Cloud of Knowing from about the 13th century, where it says that God cannot be known by reason, but can be loved and chosen by the true loving will of your heart. And the Mundaka Upanishad says similarly, the self is the source of love and may be known through love, but not through thought. And so in other words, the understanding we have about things by our thinking about them is not the same as actually knowing them in our heart. And love is a key they're talking about. So that while we may be able to have the road signs towards enlightenment, that's not the experience. The experience is actually having that sense of intimate connection and oneness. And so as we go through today, we're going to be looking at how do we move not just from the understanding about, but to the experience within. And we talked last time about what are some of the barriers to that. And just as a brief summary, one, we said our physical senses lead us to feel separate from others, so that, you look on who's attending today and you've got 40, 50 different people, and our physical senses of sight say, okay, we're all separate people. We all have our little squares in the Zoom call here, for example. All of our senses really help us understand and actually navigate this world of separation. But we believe that our external conditions actually cause our inner experience. We say, that political situation just really upsets me. Or this person is so kind, I just love them. And so we keep thinking that our inner experience of like feeling sad or disgusted or upset is caused by what's outside of us. Or we think that why we actually love is because it's a loving situation. Of course, we have to love. And that actually keeps us a bit stuck, that belief. And we judge everything by what we like or dislike and want or don't want. And if we like something, more love will flow. If we don't like something, less love will flow. So we live much in a conditional world when we have these kinds of barriers up. And we react to conditions rather than nurturing the inner experience we desire. Where Swami says, and he treats us as prema swarupala, embodiments of love. Well, how do we allow that embodiment of love? How do we let our true self really shine? And of course, by shifting these kinds of tendencies, we awaken and we get to know naturally that we already are that divine love. It's not something we have to earn or achieve. It is who we are. It's like when these four clouds clear, the sun is able to shine clearly through. It's always been there. It's just gotten hidden some way. And so I want to pick up on this and give you one exercise that will echo through this entire time together. And it's around noticing how you can feel love in one situation and then hold that in a more difficult situation with the same love light. And this is very consistent with what Swami is teaching us, that he says, if you view things with love, with a loving heart, the whole world, the whole creation will appear to you as a reflection of love. Now imagine that the entire creation is actually seen as a reflection of love, a different divine viewpoint, if you will. And how we get there is to radiate boundless love towards the entire world, unhindered and without ill will. That's unhindered even by the conditions. So here's the exercise I'd like to do with you right now. Let me go backwards. Is to, now you can do this standing up if you'd like. You've got your screens off, and because it actually works even, to me, more powerfully standing up. But if you wish to sit, that's also fine. So what I'd like you to do is close your eyes for a moment and bring into your memory a scene or a situation from your past in which you have felt this kind of intimate connection, this sense of deep peace and love, a deep sense of allowing and acceptance, a deep sense of just joy. It could have been playing with a young puppy, 12 weeks old, or it could have been holding a young infant, perhaps your firstborn. It could be just seeing a dear friend you haven't seen for 2 years. Just imagine that one moment and see and look at the experience that you're having. What is that joy, that peace, that intimate connection? And really breathe into that experience and then be able to kind of relish it. And now, as you let that scene fade away, still hold on to that experience. Almost like with a blank stage in front of you, just hold that experience and keep that in your memory. And now bring into that space in front of you a person from work that you may not have an easy time with, but continue to hold that same expression of love that you had before. See if you can shine the same level of light on that person as you shined on the previous situation. You may notice that one thing that helps you is perhaps you can feel a moment of gratitude to that person, or a moment of appreciation for something about them, or a sense of caring, or perhaps even some compassion for them. Something that brings alive for you that same expression that you had earlier. And now go ahead and let that scene fade and just come back to your breathing for a moment. And we're going to do it a second time. I'd like you to kind of take a deep breath and then let it out just gently. I'd like you to bring into your attention another moment where you have felt, or it could be the same moment, but where you have felt a sense of deep connection with someone, intimate connection, a sense of flowing joy about being with them, or a situation. It could be a sunset. And just bring that into your awareness. Could be during a walk in the woods, a deep sense of connection and love. And just notice that experience inside of you, inside of your heart, as if it's a glowing perhaps, or just kind of dwell in that space. And slowly let the scene slip away, but keep holding that space of love, that sense of caring, that connection, that intimacy, that joy. And again, bring a person from work into that space, someone that you may not be easily getting along with. And see if you can hold them in that space. Not that you're loving them as an object, but that you're simply holding them in that space of love that's radiating from you. It's like you're bathing them in that light. And again, it could be a feeling of gratitude that you can find in yourself that's sincere, a feeling of appreciation or caring or compassion for that person that helps you hold that sense of love shining towards them. And then let that person leave and go ahead and return back to your breath. When you feel ready, go ahead and open your eyes. Okay. Would anyone like to share what that was like, or any difficulties you might have had in doing that exercise? Maybe a bit of a shy group today, but please feel free. We're in a safe space. It's friends here, it's family, it's brothers and sisters, and we all learn from each other. So anything you share is probably what someone else has been waiting to hear about.
Sairam, brother.
Yes, Jeannie.
As I was going through the meditation, I recall saving a lizard that had fallen into a basin of water. And when I finally helped it to jump out of the water, I felt so happy and so connected to that lizard.
Oh.
Yeah.
And how were you able to hold that feeling of connection and joy in bringing someone else into that space?
Should be able to, but but this experience,
it's a process. This is a muscle. This is a shifting muscle, if you will. And it's one of those things where it says deconditioning ourselves to an older programming and introducing a new way of allowing our true self to shine through. And it's something that's why we're in a lifetime journey. It's kind of why we have a body. So I think, we can all be patient with that. We'll talk about that more. Thank you, Sairam.
Thank you.
Anyone else? Anyone else like to share, please?
Sairam.
Yes, Rajeshwai.
Yes, in the center, no. I was first I came as a side devotee to the center. I was struggling to share my experiences, but I never got a chance of speaking. Then one day, somebody came and asked questions. So I stood up and answered. And that person who lifted me up by asking questions, and he extended his hand and lifted me up with several questions. That person I cannot forget. It's full of unconditional, true, pure love was there. That made me, gave me a lot of experiences and taught me a lot of things. And I expanded myself through that. So that sort of love, pure, unconditional, that experience I am having it and experiencing that still. And I've learned a lot from that. So I'm grateful to that person. Thank you, Sairam. I saw Swami in you. That's Sairam.
Sairam, thank you so much. Well, again, this exercise will echo as we move throughout the rest of this program. So I'm going to move us along, but just remember that even if this was difficult, this is the beginning of a shift to almost a different level of perception. Like Swami says, when we can begin to see the world through the lens of love, the whole world starts appearing differently. And we'll explore that theme as we go along here even further. So I want to talk about the spiritual journey. And to start with, we find it from many different teachings. I would like to quote from a mystic named John of the Cross, who lived in the 15th century or 16th century in Spain. And he talked about the spiritual journey in 3 stages, which they called, this was the classic Christian naming, goes back to the early 4th and 5th centuries even, the purgative, the illuminative, and the unitive. But this is what he says. He says, it's like putting a log on a fire. He says, at first, the fire acts on the wood by driving out all its moisture. And then very slowly, it expels from the wood everything that is inconsistent with the nature of fire. But it then starts to burn on the outside. So the log at first is moist, it gets dried out, and then it starts emitting some flames from it. And that keeps growing until at last it transformed the wood into the fire itself. In this way, the wood is no longer separate from the fire in any way. It is part of that fire. And in this way, the wood acquires all the properties belonging to the fire. Once it is dry, it dries other things, and it acquires the heat of the fire and then produces that heat itself. So these 3 stages, we're actually going to talk about as states instead of stages for a while. And it's similar to what Swami says, that in the journey to unity from now itself, you have to start really now. In the beginning, you regard yourself as a mere human being. Then you reach the stage when you realize your potential divinity. Then you realize your divinity itself. Now, if you look at this, ask yourself, what are some of the characteristics of each state of this? Because in the first state, you regard yourself as a mere human being. And some of the things you might be seeing here is, first of all, it starts with feeling separate. And we feel that we're, like our senses have told us, we're separate beings. Don't run into that tree. It's going to hurt you if you do. When you get to a traffic light, look both ways, make sure there's no cross traffic. That sense of separateness, it's like being able to guide yourself through this 3-dimensional world. And at its best, you might feel like a servant or messenger of God. You're serving God, you have this relationship with God, but you're still feeling separate from God in some way. Baba talked about Jesus talking about being a messenger, saying that I'm not teaching you what I have, I'm teaching you what the Father has given to me. I'm giving you the message that way. But it can also have a world of fear. We feel separate, we might be in danger, our ego can get built, we can start to feel like it's us versus them. I feel connected to a small group, but it's against some enemy. We're achieving, we're judging. A lot of times it gets down to the feeling of there's something wrong with me. In the classic teaching, you're a sinner, you need to expel, you have to change your nature, that somehow you're just not good enough. And at its worst, it's more of a hopeless isolation. This is where it's getting close to suicide for some people. That separateness, instead of feeling a connection to God as a servant or messenger, you feel all alone completely. But this is the world of duality. And if you look at when you used to stage, when you realize your potential divinity, there now you're in that sense of the family of God. You have a friendship with God. It's like the last activity before surrendering is friendship with God. You're sharing in this DNA of God. You know the righteousness of your inheritance of divinity. And this is what they call qualified non-duality. But it's really that sense of, I share in the divine nature. It's a potential that I can experience here. But the final, when you actually realize it, you have that experience. It's a feeling of oneness, where you've awakened to something that's already been there all along. You didn't have to actually achieve anything. You just had to wake up to it. You feel that sense of wholeness. You're partaking in the divinity or merging or the unity. It is the world of non-duality. I'd like you just to take a moment and just write down for yourself, what are some moments when you've already experienced each of these states? Have you experienced the separateness? Have you experienced kind of being a son or daughter of God, if you will, in the family? Or have you experienced moments of kind of a oneness through love? And just take a moment and just write down any thoughts you have about where you have visited each of these states, in one moment or one day or 1 hour, or 1 minute, 1 second, sometime in your life. This is the first of the 3 self-inquiries I said that we'd go through. Just take stock of what you see here. Okay? And one of the promises about this process is that blessed are the pure of heart, for they shall see God. That the pure of heart is part of how we grow through all this, we'll see. But I want to give you a little pop quiz. Now, here's three, looking at these three different states, or three modes, and here's three different budgeons. I'd like you to see if you can name what's the state of consciousness that the budgeon is written from. The first is, I am God, I am God, I am no different from God. And the second one is, at your feet, dear Lord, we pray, bless us with your love this day. And the third one is, you are my mother, you are my father, you are my nearest kin, you are my dearest friend. So what would you say the first one is? Is that a duality consciousness, a qualified non-dual, or a non-dual?
Non-dual.
Okay, non-dual? Good. Yes. This is I'm identifying with my divinity. I am God, I'm no different from God. I sometimes sing that, by the way, but since God is love, I am love, I am love, I am no different from love. Now, what about the second one? What would you say that one is?
Dualism. Yeah, that's dualism.
Okay, dualism, because the key word here is your. At your feet, dear Lord, bless us with your love. This is speaking to really, Lord, as being separate from you. And we're praying to that separate. You know, it reminds me about how, even as I lived in the ashram for 16 years, there were times when I would be back visiting in the USA, and I actually had an easier time in the USA tuning into Swami than I would in Darshan, because the illusion of Swami being separate from me in the orange robe walking around was so strong. I actually felt more separate from him at that moment than I would just being quietly in my own room, sitting and meditating. And so it is that expression of, you can feel an intimate closeness, but still feel separate. Well, and of course, that leaves you are my mother, you're my father, nearest kin, dearest friend, as the qualified non-dual, because it's the expression of family. It's like being a member of the family of God, the DNA of God. But that DNA is the same DNA of divinity is in you as well. Good. So, you know, again, you can look at what's that sense of relationship. And I call the first one, my experience, the best words I know how to use are loving oneness. And for the duality, I look at a delicious connection. And the third, I look at as an intimate kinship. Those are my words. Again, words just point to an experience. They're not the experience itself. I just try to give you kind of at least sharing it if I could. Now, if we look a little bit further into the non-dualism, he says it's the awareness of the divine in everything, everywhere, and in full measure. So non-dual sees the divine everywhere. It requires intense spiritual effort of the will in order to remove all trace of ego and all idea of duality from the mind of the human being. In a sense, that's what we were doing in that exercise a few moments ago. That as you can hold a sense of unconditional love in some form towards anything and everything, it's like you've stopped the conditionalness and you've moved into something more unconditional, that no matter what the condition is, you can still be shining love. You can still be holding it in love. Not that you're loving it as an object, but that you're holding it in a space of non-dual love. And Baba reminds us, don't imagine that you're sinners because you are heirs to the eternal bliss. So don't imagine that you, from a duality standpoint, that something's wrong with you. But from a qualified dual, you are heirs. You have earned the rights to. You are part of the DNA family. And even Muhammad has said, God says, oh man, only follow my laws and you shall become like unto me. There is a beautiful, just exploring this non-dual for a moment too, there's a beautiful statement by Khalil Gibran. Because it's said that before entering the sea, a river trembles with fear. She looks back at the path she has traveled, from the peaks of the mountains, the long winding road crossing forests and villages. And in front of her, she sees an ocean so vast that to enter there seems nothing more than to disappear forever. And so even our notion of non-dualism can be afraid. It's nothing more that you will disappear in merging. Because it says, but there is no other way back. The river can't go back. Nobody can go back. It's impossible in existence to go back. The river needs to take the risk of entering the ocean, because only then will fear disappear. Because that's where the river will know it's not about disappearing into the ocean, but becoming the ocean. It's an expansion of our self-identity rather than a disappearing. And I found that to be just a very enlightening kind of road sign to me about what this experience of non-duality actually holds for us, and where can we have that experience today. And so let's look at how we evolve and awaken through states of consciousness. Again, Swami says, first you start with the idea, I'm in the light. So this is the sense of the dualism, being the servant. It's what John of the Cross had called the purgative dimension. And if you'll notice in this diagram, the red circle is really the dominant, if you will, of the three consciousness states. It begins to diminish as you grow in practice in the gymnasium of spiritual practice, until at some point that qualified non-dual state emerges, where you're feeling that the light is in me. It's not just that I'm in the light, separate from it, but it's actually glowing in me. I'm part of that family. I'm part of what can produce that light. It's like the log on the fire that begins to start emitting flames, supported by the burning fire underneath it. And then you continue to grow even further until you get to the point where you say, I am the light. This is the non-dualism, the oneness, or the unity of it. He says, and that is the supreme wisdom. And if you look at this in terms of the whole dialogue we've been having, it really is a journey from conditional love to unconditional love, to where the whole state is, you're letting your light shine, even as Jesus said, you are the light of the world. Let your light shine before men. And as we move from this to embrace more and more of a non-dual experience through love, we actually get to that point where we get to be unconditional. And this really is the fundamental issue here. It takes us back to the other exercise we had, because the inquiry, and again, I'd like you to write some things down here, and we can discuss also, how can you shift or dance from one state to the other in your relationships, at work, or in psi activities? So take a moment and just reflect upon that, if you would. How can you shift? If you're in a dualistic moment, how can you shift to something where you think the light is in me? I'll give you a quick example. There was a time when I was in my 20s, young 20s, and whenever I travel back home, after a couple of days home, my mother would corner me and start complaining about my father. And it would last for hours sometimes. And I would be impatient. I would feel disconnected. I didn't know what to do. And this happened trip after trip, until one time I really started to understand what my mother was looking for in her feeling troubled was to feel that she was loved. And of course, I was feeling irritated with that whole story, and I was not giving her love. And what she was looking for was love in the form of my agreeing with her about how bad things were. And finally, I could sit down with her and I'd say, Mother, I've been thinking about this, and I first of all want to know I love you, and I disagree with you. I just want to make it real clear, it's not the same. I can disagree with a perspective and may hold a different opinion of something, but that doesn't mean I don't love you. That was a shift that changed our whole dynamic after that. That's what I mean by taking a shift. So would anyone like to share anything about where you've seen yourself be able to make a shift at work or in a relationship or perhaps in a psi activity? Niranjan?
Yeah, Sairam William. So I don't know if I could say I would shift my state from one to the other, but I would say that the awareness of that oneness, or awareness of awareness of our true nature has always
Mhm.
helped me to at least respond to the situation rather react.
Yes.
Respond to the situation because life presents a lot of situations. Some, in our perspective, some may be pleasant, some may be unpleasant, but in reality, they are all experiences. They are all experiences designed to nurture our growth. So
Mhm.
the awareness of these levels of consciousness, or the awareness of the true nature of ourselves, at least helps me to just look at the person as a person, not associate whatever that person has done to his or her nature, but maybe just to limit it to that activity. Maybe in an
Mhm.
activity that I may not agree with, or in my understanding it was not righteous or whatever. So I could just
Mhm.
talk about that activity and to an extent condemn or say that's not welcome, that's not appropriate, but still accept the person as he or she is.
Mhm. Yeah. Good. Thank you so much. That's very clear. Someone else like to share something here?
Sai Ram, I think we have to put ourselves in that person's place and see
Mhm.
what he's doing is correct or not. And Swami says not to judge people or to compare people.
Mhm.
And as that brother Niranjan said, you accept people as they are. Five fingers are very important, but each different, like that. You must know to tolerate and experience and understand. Sai Ram.
Mhm. Sadam. Let me give one other example also about a work situation that I had recently. There was a person that we had contracted with to help us sell a portion of our business. And he was very strong in his opinions about what would be the best way to do this, that were different from mine. And for a while, I felt really just upset. The relationship was not very good, and yet we had hired him to do this. And at one point, I realized something. I realized that what his intention was all along was, from his expertise, how to do his very best job for us. And he was very insistent about what he thought would be the right way to do it. But I could feel the gratitude for his sincerity in wanting to actually do a good job for us. And I wrote him a note just thanking him for his wisdom and for his dedication to our well-being. Even though I didn't like his style, but I could feel grateful. And that gratitude has changed our relationship. But first of all, it changed me. That was the starting point. It had to change how I was holding this. As Niranjan was saying, rather than reacting to something I didn't like, how could I feel? And there's 4 words that I like to look at: gratitude, appreciation, caring, compassion, maybe love. But those words help me to do that kind of shifting away from being reactive to, again, seeing Baba in others and so on. What can I feel grateful for? What can I appreciate? What can I care about? How can I feel compassion here? So we're going to give you a chance to talk about some of these things in a small group very shortly. I'm going to just finish up here about how I'm saying really what we can draw from this is that these 3 states of consciousness is not so much their stages like you're going to grow from one completely to the other and then off to the other, maybe after you pass out of the body. But no, we can experience each one of these states even in the moment of this hour. And so we can actually dance among those as we're growing in this journey. And one thing I just wanted to show very quickly is that, the wisdom that we have is dependent on how open our heart is, and our access to our conscience is dependent. When we are feeling frustrated, anxious, worry, or irritation, our heart rate variability, this is what science has shown. So our heart is a very chaotic rhythm, if you will, of beating. when we're feeling upset or stressed. And that compares with how the brain is when we're feeling appreciation, caring, and love. The heart rate is very smooth in terms of how that beats. What's important here is that the heart has a magnetic field of 60 to 100 times stronger than the brain's. And so what the heart is radiating out with these kind of vibrations is what entrains the brain. And when you're feeling anxious and worry, the front cortex of your brain shuts down and you move to basically your more primitive fight or flight or freeze self-protection reactions. When you're feeling the positive emotions of appreciation, love, or caring in others, the whole cortex opens up and you actually have in your brain more capability of tuning into what is really wisdom. And when we do that, we promote optimal performance, whether it's at work or just in our daily life. And when you talking about mantras or other techniques, this is where you're able to shift in that moment. And that's what we're really talking about here, is that shift. So I just want to end by looking at one question of this journey that we're on. In the USA, there's a road that has been around for 50, 75 years called Route 66. It goes from Chicago up in the middle of Great Lakes, all the way down to the left over to the Pacific Ocean, about 2,000 miles. And it became not just a road to drive on, but a whole set of experiences you can have along the way. And so it was called Route 66. There was even a song written to it in the 1950s called Route 66. It was a big deal. And if we use that as a metaphor for the moment, it's like when we start on that journey, we come to various road signs to tell us where we are and how far we are from different cities and so on. But we have to remember that words and concepts are these road signs for the spiritual journey. What every word I've said today is more like a pointer towards an experience. The destinations are those momentary direct experiences that give us the proof of the pudding. It's when we've actually done a shift, even if it was only for an hour or 10 minutes, that, okay, that's that moment of when our heart opened back up, we got back centered again. And so, on this other journey, whether it's the sunrises or sunsets, even being in between that is part of what the excitement of that journey is all about. It's like, as we go through day after day, how can we make each day something that we can appreciate on the journey? And so when we come to the end, which maybe that's when we leave our body, we'll have seen how, what the Buddha said, we will develop love, practice it, make it both a way and a basis. And as Swami said, all spiritual paths are paths to love. The goal is also love, so that this entire journey is a journey of love with all the different paths, the different aspects that we can bring into it, different practices and so on. And so this is how we can ultimately cultivate that vision, and where we can end up and find, Swami said, finding divinity everywhere. And God can be attained through love. And that's what even people like Mother Teresa always had to say, that it's in seeing the face of Jesus that she was able to do the work that she did, even with the poorest of the poor. She saw the face of Jesus in every single person, every single thing. So that is what we're here for. And so what I'd like to do is move into a time for us to break into small groups. And for that, here are the three questions that we've had. The last question being, well, first is, when have you experienced each of these states of consciousness? We had you draw some notes for that. How can you shift and dance from one to the other? And then how can you focus on unconditional love? How could it help you evolve towards this new non-duality? How can we use this as really kind of the Route 66 of what we're traveling? And I'd like to make those questions actually a little bit more specific for our breakout groups here. So I'd like you to identify a moment when you had that kind of dualistic mindset or emotions. You could have had fear, you could have felt separate. Your mindset was, I'm feeling put off here, or I'm feeling anxious here, whatever it is. And then what might be keeping that stuck? Why is it still circulating for you? Why is it harder to shift? Is there anything that's a cloud in the way that you could learn to kind of drop or loosen or lighten? And then ultimately, how can you shift that experience into unconditional love and that sense of non-duality? And again, my key words for this for you is, can you find a place of gratitude in that moment, or find a sincere, something that you can appreciate in that moment or about the person? Is there some way you could feel a moment of caring about them, or compassion for their suffering that may cause them to behave in a certain way? So with that, I'd love to have Hema take over and move us into some small groups for, let's say, 20 minutes, and give people a chance. And the emphasis here should be, I think, on question 3 in your discussion group. So 1 and 2 will be a part of it as well. So Hema, can you set us around?
Yeah, I'm going to open up the rooms.
Okay. And the facilitators will have these questions there for all of you, by the way.
I'm just going to move the facilitators.
Oh, yes. Yeah.
Yep, they're all back.
Okay, welcome back. And I'm sure you had a nice time at the workshop. So can we have some experiences, or would you like to share with us what happened? Yes, Milling.
Sorry, wrong. Okay. In my group, I have a brother saying that, the initiate stage is, he always say that I am I, God, I am I. Only I am I, and God is God. These two dimensions. Then along the way, during the service activity, he find a joy, with the activity like handicapped children's, and he felt the connectivity. He starts feeling that the connectivity is the closeness, the happy moments. The I and I become I am God. It's more going to the that part of it. And the second part of it about duality, and this duality for him is actually during the meditations. He having so much of chatting. The thought is so heavy. One moment he having the state of no thoughts, meaning the oneness, and he feel that the oneness. The one is when you do not have the thought inside. Constantly, he say we need to be constantly watch our thought. Actually, that the meditations is really lead him to get out from the duality for him. Then the third one is he shared one experience sharing when young times he was the trainer inside the bank. Okay, so when training sections, one guy walked in, with a sleeping mood and then slap on the table, and then very sarcastically he go to that guy and say, you fell sleepy, then go back to the dorm and sleep. And then the guy said, okay, fine, and then left the room. Later, the classmate explained to him and saying that, he just separated from the wife. He needs to take care of the young children. That's why. So since then, that incident did him, don't so fast to use your judgmental. So in other words, he developed the empathy. Since then, he realized that, that incident always remind him and keeping a thinker about developing love in him, to see that, having empathy, and compassion, toward people. Don't simply judge. And then we have a sister Shamini. This sister saying that, every day is a different day for him. It's for him, for her. Every day is a different day. One day is happy day, one day is mad day, one day is angry day. He perceived the day in, day out. And the beauty thing in him is he's always having a constant awareness with Swami. He always talk to Swami. He's always called for Swami. Swami, calling for Swami, that will be constantly integrated. When he's stuck in any day, in any moment, or in anger situations, he call on Swami. The Swami will give him. He believed that Swami is giving a light how to overcome it. That much of confidence and conviction in her life. He used to say that in my dreams, I have dreamt. Swami said that I will put you in a school, and he believed this satsang is a school for her. That much of convictions, right? And I have another sister. Sister's also saying that about dream. She has a problem, a difficulty to solve, and he hold on Swami and he says, Swami, you are the only my refugee. You know, you are the only one I can look up to in this Halvi. That much of convictions. The third one, I have a brother saying that, you know, all these years, and he believed that all these years we have so much a block is because of conditioning. We have so much of conditioning since young until now. Okay, this conditioning and put us in the positions when we connect with people, we very fast counter and the shortcoming. We will say of other people's shortcoming first instead of the empathy to overview the entire big picture. So in other words, we do not want to react that fast. At the same time, we respond. Yes, that's all, Brother Sarah.
Thank you. Very nice. It's a variety of experiences demonstrating different stages. Thank you so much, Sister Jeannie.
Sairam, yeah, and in our group, brother, regarding the first question, what might be, where did you experience the dualistic mindset? Nah? So Brother James said, it is very difficult to see oneness, that most of the time we are more dualistic than non-dualistic. So, and then he says, oneness is not easy to achieve. And then, but what we can do is we try not to react in certain situations, have patience and allow things to happen. And hopefully that things will get better. And then one sister, Gita, she said, in her center, she spoke to one senior person and that person reacted in a very rude manner. So sister decided to keep her cool, although she didn't like it, but she didn't want to prolong, that feeling. So, and one time she had the chance when that person sang a bhajan and it was very beautifully sung, and sister praised her, complimented her, and that her emotions became unstuck after that. So it actually worked both ways for her and for the other person as well. And another sister said, she attended a party which was actually for young people, and then she felt very out of place. So her emotions were all, she was with the emotion that she's in this situation, and she tried to quietly keep to herself. So anyway, she said that was how she felt. So her emotion, I think, was not easy to be handled. But she said after some time, the emotion also went away. And then James also shared again that in life, we know that there are difficult people that we have to get along with. And some people have more ego than others. And that with such people, we have to be patient and wait for the right time. And also he said, sometimes people appear very nice, but when you really talk to them, you feel that they like to be praised, things like that. So yeah, and he also shared that there was one lady boss who was very beautiful, but others condemned her, but somehow James was okay with her. And James was able to show to the rest that, the lady boss is not what they think, that she is actually nice. So some of these personality clashes can be overcome. And one brother, Tiago, said not just negative things, but also sometimes positive things like relationship. When you love somebody, still there might be some all this dualistic mindset. So that was one brother, Tiago. And Sister Gita, the last one, she said, the first incident should not take it so seriously. Yeah, Sister Gita said she will not take that incident she experienced seriously, but instead she will try to make things better. And so that was how she learned how to get her emotions unstuck. And that was all. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you.
Sairam.
Sairam.
Mm-hmm.
So that was quite a lot of experiences.
Yeah.
Okay.
I think
we
it's
still have time to share, or
Yeah, one more, maybe 7. Okay, last one.
Okay, just summing up, just to sum up, from our group, we all agree that duality is perhaps a coexisting component of our day-to-day experience, and perhaps it consists of the majority of our experience on a daily basis. We can all agree to that. Then the emotions can be a mixture of either irritability, sadness, anger, and it's all based on the situation itself. However, moving forward, we all think that it is all due to the attachment of the I to the body and I am the mind. So subconsciously, we are still convinced that we are the body, we are the mind. Hence, this duality exists. And finally, how can we make this shift? We believe that true understanding of our true nature, through being grateful for each situation, instead of trying to remove the duality, perhaps taking a different approach and appreciating the fact that Swami has given you this moment to realize this much, to realize that you can still appreciate what is with you in that moment. And finally, we understand that this space is a space where we can all learn and grow together. So there's no right and wrong, and we don't have to compare ourselves with each another. So we can work towards our spiritual upliftment. So that's a summary. Sarah.
Thank you, Sathya. I think there's really a very nice real shades and grades of experiences. Thank you so much. Back to you, William.
Okay, well, thank you, everyone. Again, I just from listening to these insights, I'm learning myself, obviously, that we're all on this journey together. I just wanted to remind you just of a couple of themes here is that, you know, the mind, as you were just now talking about, Sathya, is really an instrument given to us to help navigate the daily world. It's not an enemy, but it has to be, it's the monkey mind that has to be given the proper role. And for us to shift, what we're talking about shifting is not neglecting or ignoring the dual world, but holding it in a bigger context, holding it in the non-dual framework. If you think of Swami, obviously living in the non-dual consciousness, and yet he operates in the dualistic world. And we can do the same thing. It's not a matter of giving up duality or outgrowing it. It's a matter of holding it in the non-dual. And the way to do that, Swami has said, and so many others have said, the spiritual leaders, it is this unconditional selfless love. And if we can just shift to that, that is the actual operating system of non-duality. And so Swami says, whenever you see the moment of love, know that that's divine love itself. And so whenever you've had that experience of love, that is you experiencing your divinity. It's what for all of us, that basically love is God and God is love. And so whenever there is that kind of love, that is God's presence being manifested. And that gives us the sense that, you know, we can realize more and more as day by day passes that we don't have to achieve oneness. We already are one. We have to simply awaken to that truth. When Swami says, the only difference between you and me, Swami says, is that I know who I am. You don't recognize yourself yet. And so as we simply wake up to that fact, we know with confidence that it's not achieving something that's beyond us. It's actually just waking up to what already is. And so I want to kind of leave it with there and just see if I can just do one more little share screen with you. And just, you know, over the next 2 weeks, I'd like you to just take notice on those days when you actually can dance or shift among these 3 different states. You know, when does you see each one arising? And what can you do in the coming weeks to nurture that expansion so that use love in some form of love as the expansion tool, if you will, in anything else that you've already found useful from all your learning with Swami. and experience the benefit of all that. But just take notice of when you can dance among these different states or shift between them. Make that a strengthening process for yourself to nurture that expansion. And even if you feel angry inside, you can hold that anger in your own compassion for yourself. You don't have to suppress it or express it. You can hold it and see what the presence of love can actually do even for your anger. So with that, I wish you the best for the next couple of weeks, and we'll see you when the Nananjan gets to pick up on the next part of our journey. Suresh or Nananjan, anything else you'd like to say as we close?
No, I'm done. Thank you so much. It was really very, very nice. So next 2 weeks, we will be observing our own inner dance, right?
Yes, exactly. Yes, and celebrating that the sun is always shining. It's just sometimes behind the clouds. That's all.
Okay.
Okay.
Thank you. Thank you. And
Sai Ram, everyone.